What if I told you that thousands of years before the pyramids were built, before the Greeks worshipped Zeus, before the Romans conquered the known world, there existed a civilization that claimed to be ruled by beings from the stars? These mysterious beings appear in some of humanity's oldest written records, carved into clay tablets in the cradle of civilization itself. But who were they really? Were they simply mythological gods, created by ancient minds, trying to understand their world? Or could they have been something far more extraordinary? Today, we'll journey back over 4,000 years to ancient Mesopotamia, examine the original texts that mention these enigmatic beings, explore the archaeological evidence, and investigate the modern theories that have captured imaginations worldwide. From respected scholars to controversial authors, from ancient creation myths to modern alien theories, we'll separate fact from fiction in this comprehensive exploration of the Anunnaki mystery. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and prepare to question everything you thought you knew about humanity's earliest civilizations. This is the story of the Anunnaki. To understand the Anunnaki, we must first understand where their story begins. Ancient Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in what is now modern-day Iraq. This region, often called the cradle of civilization, witnessed humanity's first cities, first written language, and first complex societies. Around 3,500 BCE, the Sumerians established what many consider the world's first true civilization. They invented cuneiform writing, developed the wheel, created the first known legal code, and built magnificent ziggurats that reached toward the heavens. But perhaps most importantly for our story, they left behind thousands of clay tablets containing their myths, legends, and religious beliefs. The Sumerians didn't see themselves as primitive people struggling to survive. Their texts reveal a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, mathematics, and governance. They tracked celestial movements with remarkable precision, developed complex irrigation systems, and created literature that would influence cultures for millennia to come. In this advanced civilization, the Anunnaki held a place of supreme importance. The very name Anunnaki comes from the Sumerian language meaning princely offspring, or offspring of An, An being the supreme sky god in their pantheon. These weren't minor deities relegated to specific functions. They were described as the primary divine council that governed both heaven and earth. The Sumerians believed that before humans ruled cities, the Anunnaki had established divine order on earth. According to their creation myths, these beings had shaped the very landscape, established the first settlements, and eventually created humanity itself to serve their needs. This wasn't seen as slavery in the modern sense, but rather as a sacred duty. Humans were honored to serve beings of such immense power and wisdom. What makes the Sumerian accounts particularly intriguing is their matter-of-fact tone. These weren't presented as distant myths or allegories, but as historical records of actual events. The tablets describe specific individuals, detailed genealogies, and precise locations where these divine beings supposedly lived and worked. According to the earliest Sumerian texts, the Anunnaki were descendants of An, the god of the heavens, and Ki, the goddess of earth. They formed a divine council responsible for decreeing the fates of humanity and maintaining cosmic order. But unlike the distant, unknowable gods of some religions, the Anunnaki were described as beings who actively intervened in human affairs. The pantheon included several major figures whose names echo through ancient literature. Enlil, the god of air and storms, was considered the oldest and most powerful of the Anunnaki. According to Sumerian mythology, Enlil literally separated heaven and earth, creating the space where human civilization could flourish. Enki, the god of water and wisdom, was portrayed as humanity's protector and the source of knowledge and technology. Nin-Hursag, the mother goddess, was credited with the actual creation of human beings. What's particularly fascinating about these descriptions is their specificity. The texts don't just say, "the gods created humans." They provide detailed accounts of how this was accomplished, where it took place, and why it was necessary. The Anunnaki are described as having physical forms, dwelling in specific locations, and engaging in very human-like activities, including politics, warfare, and even romantic relationships. The Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki as beings of tremendous physical size and power, wearing distinctive horned crowns that marked their divine status. They possessed something called melam, a terrifying divine radiance that could overwhelm mortals who looked upon them. Yet despite their awesome power, they were portrayed as having personalities, emotions, and motivations that humans could understand. As we'll see, this historical approach to describing the Anunnaki would later fuel some of the most controversial theories in modern archaeology and ancient astronaut research. The number of Anunnaki varied in different texts, sometimes 7, sometimes 50, sometimes 300 or 600. This inconsistency might reflect different traditions or time periods, but it also suggests a complex hierarchy with various ranks and responsibilities. Some texts describe the Anunnaki as judges in the underworld, while others place them as active rulers on Earth's surface. What emerges from these ancient accounts is a picture of beings who were powerful beyond human comprehension, yet intimately involved in human affairs. They weren't abstract forces of nature, but personalities, with names, relationships, and specific roles in the cosmic order. This detailed, personal approach to describing divine beings would prove crucial to later interpretations of who the Anunnaki really were. The story of the Anunnaki isn't found in just one text, but scattered across hundreds of clay tablets spanning thousands of years. The most important of these ancient documents provide detailed accounts of creation, divine intervention, and the relationship between gods and humans that would influence religious thought for millennia. The Enuma Elish, often called the Babylonian creation epic, tells the story of how the universe itself came into being through conflict between primordial forces. In this epic, the god Marduk defeats the chaos monster Tiamat and uses her body to create the heavens and earth. But the Anunnaki play a crucial role in this cosmic drama. They're the ones who ultimately decide Marduk's fate and grant him supreme authority over the universe. What's remarkable about the Enuma Elish is its sophisticated cosmology. This isn't a simple, let there be light creation story, but a complex narrative involving multiple generations of gods, cosmic battles, and the establishment of natural laws. The Anunnaki are portrayed as the divine council that legitimizes the new cosmic order and establishes the rules by which both gods and humans must live. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of humanity's oldest known works of literature, also features the Anunnaki prominently. In the famous flood narrative, it's the Anunnaki who decide to destroy humanity with a great deluge. However, Enki secretly warns the hero Utnapishtim, allowing him to build an ark and preserve life on Earth. This story, which predates the biblical flood account by over 1,000 years, shows the Anunnaki as beings capable of both terrible destruction and merciful intervention. But perhaps the most intriguing texts are those that describe the Anunnaki's direct involvement in human creation. The Atrahasis epic provides a detailed account of why humans were created, not out of love or divine whim, but out of practical necessity. According to this text, the Anunnaki had grown tired of performing manual labor and decided to create a worker species to serve their needs. The creation process described in these texts is remarkably specific. Enki and the mother goddess Ninhursag are said to have mixed clay with the essence of a slain god to create the first humans. Some translations suggest this involved genetic material or blood from divine beings, leading to humans who possessed both earthly and divine characteristics. What makes these accounts particularly fascinating is their practical tone. The gods don't create humans as beloved children, but as a solution to a labor shortage. Humans are designed to be intelligent enough to follow complex instructions, but not so intelligent as to challenge divine authority. This utilitarian approach to human creation has sparked intense debate among scholars and researchers. Other texts describe the Anunnaki establishing the first cities, teaching humans agriculture and crafts, and setting up the social structures that would govern early civilization. They're portrayed as active administrators of human society, not distant deities who occasionally intervened in human affairs. These ancient accounts raise profound questions. Were the Sumerians recording actual historical events, or were they creating sophisticated mythologies to explain their world? The level of detail, the consistency across multiple texts, and the matter-of-fact tone of these accounts have led some researchers to wonder if there might be more truth in these ancient stories than mainstream scholarship typically acknowledges. In 1968, a Swiss author named Erich von Däniken published a book that would forever change how some people viewed ancient history. Chariots of the Gods proposed a radical theory. What if the gods described in ancient texts weren't mythological beings at all, but extraterrestrial visitors who had been misunderstood and deified by primitive humans? Von Däniken looked at ancient artwork, megalithic structures, and religious texts through a new lens. Those divine beings descending from the sky, alien spacecraft, the gods who possessed advanced technology, extraterrestrial scientists, the creation of humans by divine intervention, genetic engineering by an advanced alien species. But it was Zecharia Sitchin who would take this theory to its most detailed and controversial conclusions. In his 1976 book, The 12th Planet, Sitchin claimed to have translated Sumerian texts that revealed the true identity of the Anunnaki. According to Sitchin, they weren't gods at all, but flesh and blood extraterrestrials from a planet called Nibiru. Sitchin's theory was remarkably specific. He claimed that approximately 450,000 years ago, the Anunnaki arrived on Earth from Nibiru, a planet with an extremely elliptical orbit that brings it close to our solar system every 3,600 years. These beings, according to Sitchin, were facing an atmospheric crisis on their home planet and needed gold to repair their atmosphere. The Anunnaki established mining operations on Earth, particularly in Africa, to extract the gold they desperately needed. Initially, they performed this labor themselves, but eventually grew tired of the back-breaking work. This led to what Sitchin called the genetic experiment, the creation of a hybrid species that combined Anunnaki DNA with that of early hominids. According to this theory, humans weren't the product of natural evolution, but rather genetically engineered workers created through advanced biotechnology. Sitchin claimed that Sumerian texts described in vitro fertilization, genetic manipulation, and cloning techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered by human science until the 20th. Sitchin's interpretation explained many puzzling aspects of human development. Our rapid evolutionary leap from primitive hominids to sophisticated humans, our unique genetic characteristics compared to other primates, and our innate drive to seek gold and other precious metals. It also provided a new context for understanding ancient megalithic structures, like the pyramids, Stonehenge, and Puma Punku. The theory gained additional support from researchers who pointed to anomalies in the archaeological record, out-of-place artifacts, ancient artwork that seemed to depict modern technology, and megalithic structures built with precision that challenges our understanding of ancient capabilities. Sitchin expanded his theory in subsequent books, describing wars between different factions of Anunnaki, the establishment of human civilization under alien guidance, and the eventual departure of the Anunnaki from active involvement in human affairs. He even predicted their return, suggesting that Nibiru's next approach to Earth would bring the Anunnaki back to reclaim their creation. The ancient astronaut theory has found support among various researchers and authors who point to similarities in creation myths worldwide, unexplained technological achievements in ancient civilizations, and what they see as evidence of advanced knowledge in ancient texts. They argue that mainstream archaeology has been too quick to dismiss these possibilities due to academic bias and institutional resistance to paradigm-shifting ideas. However, as we'll see in our next section, the academic community has responded to these theories with significant skepticism and detailed critiques of both the methodology and conclusions of ancient astronaut researchers. While the ancient astronaut theory has captured popular imagination, the academic community has responded with overwhelming skepticism. Mainstream scholars, archaeologists, and linguists have raised serious questions about both the methodology and conclusions of researchers like Sitchin and von Daniken. The most fundamental criticism concerns translation accuracy. Professional Assyriologists, scholars who specialize in ancient Mesopotamian languages, argue that Sitchin and others have systematically mistranslated Sumerian and Akkadian texts. Dr. Michael Heiser, a biblical scholar with expertise in ancient languages, has pointed out numerous instances where Sitchin's translations differ dramatically from accepted academic standards. For example, where Sitchin translates certain Sumerian words as spacecraft or rockets, mainstream scholars see Critics also point out that Sitchin lacked formal training in ancient languages and archaeology. Unlike professional Assyriologists who spend decades learning the complex grammar, context, and cultural background necessary for accurate translation, Sitchin was largely self-taught. This, scholars argue, led to fundamental misunderstandings of how ancient languages work and what the texts actually say. The archaeological evidence presents another major challenge to ancient astronaut theories. Despite claims of advanced ancient technology and alien intervention, archaeologists have found no artifacts that couldn't have been produced by human civilizations of their time. The tools, techniques, and materials found at ancient sites are consistent with gradual technological development, not sudden leaps that would suggest outside intervention. Scholars also note that the mysteries often cited by ancient astronaut theorists aren't actually mysterious to experts in the field. The precision of ancient stonework, the astronomical knowledge of early civilizations, and the construction techniques used for megalithic structures can all be explained through documented human capabilities and ingenuity. Dr. Ronald Fritz, a historian who has extensively studied pseudo-archaeology, argues that ancient astronaut theories fundamentally underestimate human intelligence and creativity. These theories, he suggests, are based on the assumption that ancient peoples were too primitive to achieve the remarkable feats we see in the archaeological record, an assumption that both archaeological evidence and historical documentation contradict. Critics also point to the selective use of evidence by ancient astronaut theorists. While they highlight texts and artifacts that seem to support their theories, they often ignore contradictory evidence or alternative explanations. The scientific method requires considering all available evidence, not just data that supports a predetermined conclusion. Perhaps most importantly, mainstream scholars argue that we don't need extraordinary explanations for the development of human civilization. The archaeological record shows a clear progression of technological and social development that can be explained through natural human innovation, cultural exchange, and gradual accumulation of knowledge. However, some scholars acknowledge that ancient astronaut theories, while scientifically unsupported, serve an important cultural function. They reflect humanity's desire to understand our origins and our place in the universe. They also highlight the remarkable achievements of ancient civilizations and encourage people to think critically about historical assumptions. The debate between ancient astronaut theorists and mainstream academia continues, with each side maintaining that the other is blinded by preconceptions. What remains clear is that the Anunnaki, whether gods or aliens, continue to fascinate us because they represent fundamental questions about human origins, our relationship with the divine, and our place in the cosmos. As we reach the end of our journey through the mystery of the Anunnaki, we're left with more questions than answers, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. The story of these enigmatic beings touches on some of humanity's most profound questions. Where did we come from? Are we alone in the universe? What is our true relationship with the divine? What we know for certain is that the Anunnaki played a central role in humanity's earliest recorded mythology. Whether we interpret them as gods, aliens, or symbolic representations of natural forces, they represent our ancestors' attempts to understand their world and their place within it. The sophistication of these ancient accounts, their detailed genealogies, complex narratives, and consistent themes across multiple texts, demonstrates the remarkable intellectual achievements of early human civilization. The academic consensus remains clear. There is no credible evidence for extraterrestrial intervention in human development. The achievements of ancient civilizations, remarkable as they are, can be explained through human ingenuity, cultural development, and the gradual accumulation of knowledge over generations. The Anunnaki, in this view, represents sophisticated mythology rather than historical fact, yet the ancient astronaut theory persists, capturing imaginations and inspiring continued research into our past. Whether or not we accept these theories, they serve an important function. They encourage us to question assumptions, to look at ancient evidence with fresh eyes, and to remain open to possibilities that challenge conventional thinking. Perhaps the most important lesson from the Anunnaki mystery is the reminder that human history is far richer and more complex than we often assume. Our ancestors weren't primitive beings struggling to survive, but sophisticated thinkers who created literature, art, and ideas that continue to influence us today. Whether they were recording encounters with gods, aliens, or the products of their own remarkable imaginations, they left us a legacy that continues to inspire wonder and debate. As we continue to explore space and search for signs of extraterrestrial life, the questions raised by the Anunnaki remain relevant. If we do encounter other intelligent species, how will we interpret that contact? How will future civilizations understand our own myths and legends? The story of the Anunnaki reminds us that the search for meaning, for connection with something greater than ourselves, is a fundamental part of the human experience. What do you think? Were the Anunnaki ancient gods, misunderstood aliens, or sophisticated mythology? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more explorations into history's greatest mysteries. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction.